Okay, so yeah, I've worked in nature conservation for around 20 years. Most recently, I was working at the Botanic Gardens in Edinburgh as a research scientist, and then this one came along, and the time away from home collecting data, I used to go away for weeks on end. Sorry.
Just contemplating the fact that it takes lots of time to look after a child as well.
Yeah, just demonstrating. Yeah, I'd be away for weeks on end collecting data in really remote places, and then I'd be in the lab for ages, and it just wasn't compatible with this one if I wanted to spend time with her. So I started thinking about other ways that I could continue to work in nature conservation, which would allow me to be in control of my time a little bit more. So I started growing my own wildflower meadow, and then thinking about ways that I could generate an income from that while spreading the word about nature conservation. I started distilling essential oils from my wildflowers and making skincare products. So yeah, that's how I came to doing what I'm doing today.
Amazing. It sounds really cool. And you're the only UK business to be wildlife friendly certified. So could you tell us a little bit more about that and what that involved and why you decided to go with those guys?
So I really wanted a certification that demonstrated environmental benefits rather than human benefits. So a lot of the other certification schemes out there for skincare in particular, you've got things like EcoCert, you've got your Soil Association, organic certifications, but a lot of these are marketed as providing human benefits, so benefits for human health. You know, you're going to look better somehow if you buy these products because they're purer. And I think people also feel like they're buying a connection to nature, but they're not actually providing any environmental benefits. I mean, if you think about organic crops, yes, they're fantastic for biodiversity, but if we're then going to just harvest them all at their absolute prime when they're providing the best habitat for biodiversity, which is generally when they're flowering, the pollinators are loving it, and then the next thing we do is crop it all, bottle it, and sell it as natural, and people are buying this, isn't it lovely, but it's no better for nature at the end of the day than a non-organic crop if we're going to harvest in that way. So by going wildlife friendly, it just provided a way of really making that connection that my brand is about the environment, it's about nature. That's of prime importance, that we're providing a net gain for wildlife. We're not looking at just no net loss or not degrading nature. We're going for net gain, and that's what wildlife friendly, I think, really shouts out.
That's amazing and refreshing to hear someone talk about it from that angle, because as you say, most skinwear brands are human focused and don't necessarily think about the impact, and it's a really good point about harvesting them at their peak, which, as you just said, is the best time for them, and then it gets taken away, and that's a huge shame. So how do you communicate? So the market is very much kind of driven by the human factor. How do you market the fact that you are wildlife friendly, and how does that tap into consumer trends and stuff like that?
Yeah, I could have, of course, done all these things in the background. I could have harvested sustainably. I could have done my wildlife habitat creation just in the background and not necessarily gone for certification. But I think by having that logo on all your products really makes people aware that that's what you're about. So certification, I feel, is so important when you're selling products. I give a lot of talks at industry events about wildlife friendly certification, and I also go to a lot of festivals, do a lot of markets, and I run workshops as well when I just talk about you know, the connection between nature and skincare, nature and natural products, natural ingredients, and why they're not always better for the environment and how we can maybe change that.
That's amazing. And have you seen a shift in the way that people think about the environment, and do you think it's perhaps getting better in the way that people are thinking about it? Or
one of the reasons that I wanted to go into kind of the wellness sector, skincare, cosmetics, is because I think consumers are really ready for this change. I think there's a real appetite there for products that are better for nature. And I think there's an assumption that natural products are good for nature. And it's only when you talk to people and you say, no, the fact that it's organic doesn't mean that it's actually good for nature. And they're like, oh yeah, like I never actually thought about that.
Yeah.
So it's been a really exciting journey that it's quite, the change is quite rapid, I think, once you start sharing the word with people, but there's a lot of work to be done in communication and in letting people know, really.
Definitely. Brilliant. And so one question that I had was a bit of a curveball, but what do you think of when you hear the word sustainable? Because a lot of people have different, I think, similar to how you've just been saying about organic and different ideas behind it. What do you think of when you hear the word sustainable?
Unfortunately, I think of plastic.
It's a good
and
point.
I think I actually think of areas that we need to bring change. And it's a real shame, actually, that I don't hear this word sustainable and think of something positive. And I think it's really demonstrates the state of the world, that when people hear words like sustainability, when they think about the environment, they often think of negative things. And it's just such a shame. And I would love, over the course of my lifetime, to change that. So when people think about the environment, they actually think of beautiful places that they can visit and access and get all these gains from, rather than thinking of it as a negative thing and, oh God, I need to do my recycling more, I need to do this, need to do that, and aren't I terrible as a human being for causing all these negative impacts? But I do think there's a lot of negativity around the word sustainability and environment and that sort of thing.
That's another good way of putting it as well, and it is a shame. I think perhaps the most high profile mentions of sustainability, things like Blue Planet, and you've got big BBC documentaries that are perhaps around the impacts and the negative side of things.
Which we do need, of course. We need that awareness. And I think it just shows the state of the world, the state that we're in at the moment is that we are in this very kind of negative place, and we need change. We need change makers, you know. Yeah. And it's great to be in that position where I feel I have an opportunity to do that, you know.
Definitely. And on the negative situation, we can't ignore the COVID word. Has that impacted the business at all?
Yeah, massively, actually. Just in terms of my financial model. So I mentioned before that I run workshops, and it's just a nice way to bring in a bit of money every month. And I also do a lot of selling at markets and festivals. Of course, all of that side of the business was put on hold. I've not been able to do any direct customer sales. It's limited opportunities to tell people about my business and spread the word about it. And obviously I've not been able to do any workshops at all. So income from that side of the business has just completely halted. Also some wildlife creation schemes that I was involved in. We've not been able to work on those this summer either. So there was a lot that was put on hold, but at the same time I used the time when we were in lockdown to formulate some new skincare products, which I've been able to bring to market just now and launch. So everything kind of went on hold. I went underground and went back to the lab and started mixing and making, and I've actually come out of it with new things to sell, which is great.
So you've made a positive out of it as well.
Yeah.
Brilliant. That's good to hear. And final, just a couple of other questions if you've got time. Around advice for other social environmental focused brands, what advice would you give to someone who's thinking about starting one, or perhaps who's on that journey of growing a sustainable brand? What would be your bit of advice for them?
I think we all need to shift our mindset a little bit. I mentioned this briefly, but to move away from this idea of no net loss. You know, we're often going for like the lowest common denominator when it comes to environmental issues, because we're in such a bad place with things. But I think we maybe need to aim higher and start looking at net gains for the environment. So yeah, just maybe bringing a little bit of positivity into the story and offering consumers a really positive story, rather than saying, oh, the environment's in such a bad place, and if you buy this product, we can try and make it a little bit less bad. But you're kind of laying that negativity onto the consumer. Let's try and bring a bit of positivity in and say, look what we can create, and you can be part of this story.
No, that'd be brilliant if we create that narrative. And I guess it's self-fulfilling as well. With if you are more positive about it, it happens, doesn't it?
That's right, yeah.
Oh, brilliant. And a bit of a weird question, but what are you reading at the moment, or is there anything that you've seen recently that's particularly inspired you?
With a 2-year-old, I don't get very much time watching telly. I'm kind of watching Bing and Arts on repeat at the moment. But in terms of inspiration, just being outside, like I literally, as soon as I go outside, that fires me up, because I just feel like the natural world is so important. We have to do everything that we can to protect it. We're so dependent on it, and I just really feel that when I go out into it, and that just gives me the energy, I guess, to go on and do what I can.
That's amazing. I think everyone should be more Sally and just get that when they go out. If only. So that's all the questions I had. It would be good if you could share where we can find you, so that anyone that's watching can find you online.
Yes. So my company is called Seilich. I've got a website, www.seilich.co.uk, which is Seilich, and that's the Gaelic word for willow, which is my little one's name. And I'm also on Instagram, Seilich Botanicals, and Facebook as well.
Everyone go and check it out.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.